Hello, everybody. Um, this is Chris here to deliver the Meaningful Interpersonal Relationships lecture. I will be spearheading this and next week's discussion while Yakov is out. But I'm very excited and I look forward to our discussions and to reviewing this topic with you. Right, so to begin, let's please sit in a quiet and comfortable position. Sit with your back straight, your head up, your feet on the floor, and your arms resting gently in your lap. Take a moment to simply sit and notice yourself in this position, where you're sitting, and how you're feeling at this moment. And right now, take 3 deep breaths in and out, breathing naturally. And at this time, place your attention on the area in the middle of your chest, around your heart. If you would like, you may place a hand on your center chest. And again, take one more deep breath. Now repeat to yourself gently and softly, and if you wish, silently or aloud, feeling the following words as they resonate within you. Love, love, love. May my heart be filled with love. And as you say this, bring to mind something that you feel caring and loving toward. This may be the image of a childhood pet, could be the serene look on another person's face about whom you care. It could be a child that you know. It may even be a feeling that you have in reaction to something, like when you lie down at the end of a very long day, and that feeling that you have as you begin to head into sleep. This image is really to help you kickstart your feelings of love. And if a feeling of loving kindness is able to arise within you without the use of these images, then that's all right as well. Then there's no need for those images. Now experience this feeling of warmth and love through your whole body. Feel the sense of caring and of healing, and let it wash over you and through you, while you gently repeat silently to yourself the following phrases. May I be well, healthy, and strong. May I be happy. May I abide in peace. May I feel safe and secure. May I feel loved and cared for. Some might find this difficult to do, to direct this loving kindness toward oneself. And that's okay. Now, bring your mind to someone you like and respect, perhaps. Maybe this is a friend, a mentor, a coworker, or even a classmate. And now direct these feelings of warmth and caring as you wish them well. May you be well. May you be happy. May you abide in peace. May you feel safe and secure. May you feel loved and cared for. And now notice how you feel in reaction to directing these feelings of loving kindness toward this person. Take note. No need to change your feelings, but of course, be mindful of them. And now, bring your mind to someone whom you love deeply. Choose someone that you find it very easy to spread loving kindness to. Send them these feelings of warmth and caring as you wish them well. May you be well. May you be happy. May you abide in peace. May you feel safe and secure. May you feel loved and cared for. Notice your feelings, how you react to directing your loving kindness toward this person. And now, bring to mind someone you do not know well. Maybe you barely know them, or you feel even neutral about. Someone you saw on the street, on the subway, or a coworker who you barely speak to. Picture them in your mind, and now send them these feelings of warmth and caring and wishing them well. May you be well. May you be happy. May you abide in peace. May you feel safe and secure. May you feel loved and cared for. And as we move forward through the next stages of this exercise, be mindful of your reactions and your feelings. And sometimes people do find at this stage it is more difficult to cultivate feelings of loving kindness. If that happens to you, take a moment to pause the recording and return to the earlier stage of the exercise, where you envisioned something warm and caring. And once you have cultivated that feeling, you can move on. Again, there's no need to rush. Now, bring to mind someone who has recently irritated or upsetted you. You can choose someone with whom you got mildly irritated, who got on your nerves this week. Someone you saw while in a traffic jam. Somebody who stepped against you in the subway. Now envisioning them, send them these feelings of warmth and caring, and wish them well. May you be well. May you be happy. May you abide in peace. May you feel safe and secure. May you feel loved and cared for. Be mindful of your reactions, your feelings. Again, if you feel the need to pause, to recultivate your feelings of loving kindness, take a moment to do that. And now, if you wish, I'd like you to direct your mind to someone who has hurt you in the past. This is somebody who you may feel bitterness toward, resentment, maybe even hatred. You are not condoning or approving what they have done to you. In this exercise, you are simply allowing yourself to let that pain and anger that you carry toward them to go. And now, as you picture this person in your mind's eye, send them these feelings of warmth and caring, and wish them well. May you be well. May you be happy. May you abide in peace. May you feel safe and secure. May you feel loved and cared for. And now, focus your attention once more on yourself. So the feeling of loving kindness fills your whole being. Breathe peacefully and deeply. And remember that all the feelings of loving kindness that you have cultivated in this exercise, which you have sent to others in this world, those whom you love, those who irritate you, and even those who have wronged you, that love can now be directed toward yourself and heal you. Take a moment now as you feel this loving kindness wash over you to again breathe deeply. And slowly bring yourself back to the room that you are in. Slowly open your eyes. Continue to breathe deeply. And now bring yourself back fully to your space. All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Let's move into our lecture. So, up to this point in positive psychology, a lot of our class attention, our readings, have focused on the application of positive psychological techniques to the individual. We've talked about topics like flow, creativity, spirituality, and religious existential experiences, and we've really tried to understand all of these in the context of the hypothetical individual being affected by these concepts. We haven't really discussed yet, though, how positive psychology can be applicable to and strengthen interpersonal interactions. When we say meaningful interpersonal relationships, these are not limited to romantic partnerships, although certainly the hypotheses and experiments outlined in this first article by Aaron et al. That you're reading for this week do address issues related to romantic couples, particularly the concepts of excitement and boredom. But meaning interpersonal relationships can also mean peer-to-peer, mentor to student, even family interactions. I think it's best to really think about this topic as broadly as possible. I can speak as somebody who was a student in this class last year, and I think that reflecting on that discussion, I wish we had been a bit broader ourselves with how we conceived of it. I know our discussion then had been very focused on concepts related to dating, but that the articles you read for today do point to how to use positive psychological techniques in everyday interactions, and that is something we'd like to bring up in this lecture and discuss at length potentially in our discussion next week. So, the Aaron et al. Article really is all about understanding how to continue the excitement that we feel in the early stages of a relationship. They discuss, and some of us might be familiar with, the concept of a honeymoon period, which usually takes place in the first 2 to 6 months of a new dating experience, where everything just seems really intense and really wonderful. But in this article, the authors acknowledge that this tends to stop after a certain point early in the relationship, but that it seems that the feelings that are associated with that honeymoon period can be recultivated through novel experiences, particularly arousing novel experiences. So these can be things like hiking together in an unknown place, bungee jumping, going to see an exciting show together. These are various things. And the idea really seems to be that these novel experiences promote continued bonding. And the reasoning behind this we don't exactly know, but we can hypothesize, and I'd certainly love to hear people's opinions this week about the potential evolutionary component to why novel experiences promote bonding. Just thinking back to the history of the human race and why, if you can survive as a couple through a new challenging experience, and why that would then promote your staying together in a romantic partnership. The Aaron et al. Article study generally, they have a few sub-hypotheses, but their overall hypothesis is that shared participation in arousing experiences will lead to a perceived increase in relationship quality. This association, they also believe, will hold if, in controlled experiments, the control group either does no activity, so the experimental group does something arousing while the control group does nothing, or even if the control group is involved in what we might think of as a mundane task. So while the experimental group is still doing this exciting activity, maybe the mundane task is going to see a movie or going out to dinner at a place that is pretty familiar to both parties. These experiments were done both through elicited questionnaires, where people were asked about their relationship satisfaction, and also these, as mentioned before, experimental conditions, where the experimental group was placed in an arousing situation. And ultimately, novel and arousing activities were positively associated with relationship quality and negatively associated with boredom. In the article, they outline a diagram that shows that boredom is found to be sort of the mediating pathway between the activities and the positive relationship quality, meaning that really it's the reduction in the boredom that seems to be the pathway to the improved relationship quality. Now, Aaron, the first author on this publication, this article really builds on his earlier work in the 1970s and the concept of the misattribution of arousal. This is associated with a pretty famous study in the world of psychology, the suspension bridge study. So in this study, Aaron hypothesized that if men were more physically aroused due to an exciting experience, having more adrenaline, they would be more inclined to misattribute their arousal. So what do we mean by this? In the suspension bridge study, males walked across a suspension bridge, or they walked across a sturdy bridge. The suspension bridge was wider over a much greater chasm than the sturdy bridge, and therefore it was going to induce a greater amount of fear in the participant. So the male would walk across the bridge, and then he would take this thematic apperception test, which was supposed to analyze how sexual the males believed the images from the test were. The key point was that afterwards, there was a female confederate, a female researcher, who would give the males her phone number and say, if you have any more questions about this experiment, please give me a call. And the difference was that sometimes she would give them the number right after they had finished walking across the bridge versus much later after the study had concluded. And the findings really were that when she approached them after crossing the suspension bridge right after they had finished, they were much more likely to give her a phone call because they seemed to believe that she was much more attractive and that there was some sort of spark between them. Now, I don't know if people feel like, gee, that's the death of romance right there, if we can attribute all our feelings of bonding and romantic attraction to simply being physically aroused, and maybe we're misattributing everything, and the person who we thought was the one for us, we really only fell in love with because we were just finishing up an intense run through Central Park. I don't think it's as simple as that, but I do think it's very interesting to understand from an empirical perspective and from a strictly physical perspective what can often account for these positive psychological responses as related to interpersonal relationships and particularly romantic relationships. When we talk next week, I really would love to know people's take on how much physical arousal from the perspective of Aaron really plays into how one's romantic relationship progresses. So now I'd like to move on to one of the other articles, the Algo article, which examined the role of gratitude in determining romantic health. So at the heart of this article is really the dichotomy of gratitude versus indebtedness. Gratitude tends to have these more pro-social outcomes, with the recipient putting more energy into cultivating the relationship. It's really the positive side, so to speak, of indebtedness, which can make the beneficiary feel like they owe something to the benefactor and cause them to maybe even want to get rid of the debt. So we can think of this in terms of just, if we step away from romantic relationships, just think of general gift giving. It's like, if you go to a birthday party for a person you really care about, and you give a gift to them, and they really like you, and you really like them, they feel grateful for the gift that you've given them. They say, "Oh, wow, thank you so much," and they want to do more for you in the future. 2 months down the line, when it's your birthday, they're going to give you something that's just as awesome. On the other hand, it's when you could have a situation where maybe you go to a party for somebody you don't really know really well, and you show up, and maybe they're giving party favors out, and they go, here's a party favor. And maybe you've had that reaction where you kind of go, oh, thanks. Oh, now I have to do something for you. Great. But this is something that these authors really have noted in the world as a duality that does exist. I really like the article that these authors cite in their introduction about the sorority study, where a perceived, if the girls perceived their benefactors as being someone who cared for them, who was responsive, this predicted gratitude when they received anonymous gifts. And really, at the heart of this study is the idea that it's all about how you perceive your benefactor. If you really think you need to pay them back, if you feel that this is like a strain on you. You feel this sort of indebtedness. You don't want to do it, but you got to do it. Oh, I can't wait to be rid of this and get my account back to zero and out of the negative. And from this perspective, you may even think that the benefactor has potentially negative motivations. They're trying to make me more, quote, in debt to them. Conversely, though, if the person perceives the benefactor as having positive intentions, or even selfless ones, you may feel compelled to reciprocate out of gratitude, right? And that's the other side to indebtedness, this feeling of happily wanting to pay back the person. And in turn, this gratitude tends to serve as a mechanism to promote the relationship and to sort of strengthen it. And in this study, the researchers examined feelings of gratitude and indebtedness in heterosexual relationships for about 2 weeks. The individuals filled out journals where they sort of tracked how they felt about the relationship and what the couple what each person in the couple did for the other person throughout those 2 weeks. And ultimately, they did find that gratitude did lead to increased feelings of relationship quality. And so if on Tuesday, one of the people in the relationship did something good for the other person, and that person felt gratitude, then on the next day, it was that gratitude was able to predict an increase in relationship quality from their perspective. Now, in this study, they did find a sort of null finding in terms of indebtedness. Indebtedness did not significantly predict a decrease in the feeling toward the relationship, but I do think that it's something that I'd love to get everyone's opinion on, this dynamic between indebtedness and gratitude. I also would be very curious to know the findings they found in terms of the differences between the men and women, where for the gratitude, for the women, there was an increased sense of satisfaction, while for the men, there was the satisfaction, but there was also this increase in a sense of connection for gratitude. So I personally don't have any real comments that I can provide toward that, but I would love to get folks' opinions on that when we meet next week. Not that you have to, but I'm curious to know. All right. So not part of the slides, though, is the third article, Better Living Through Perspective Taking, which really, again, comes back to the idea of, I think, clinical applications of perspective taking, which I think is really applying positive psychology to the interpersonal relationships. This article really is a survey of a number of topics and situations in which the authors feel that perspective taking might help to alleviate social issues. Now, this article, I think, of the three, is the least focused on romantic relationships. And here, I really think that some interesting points to take note of in this article are, well, first off, the issue that they note related to cultural biases of perspective taking. And we haven't really, in this class, touched on cultural biases related to positive psychology, although I do know that that is something that will probably come up in the upcoming debate, because I know that is a criticism of positive psychology. But this is an interesting place to at least raise that concern. Cultural biases in psychology usually isn't the domain for clinical psychology. I do know it tends to be more central in counseling psychology. But here these authors note that cultural biases can form potential barriers in perspective taking. And really they use this facial reaction experiment to demonstrate how it might be difficult for one to take the perspective of someone else. So in the experiment that they talk about, researchers elicited these negative feelings in their participants, and these participants came from either what they deemed an individualistic cultural background or collectivist. And sort of the stereotype is to contrast people who come from a Western European, American background versus a quote-unquote Asian background. So we're thinking of contrasting those who come from the United States, England, France, Spain, Germany, to those who come from places like Japan, Taiwan, and China. And they elicited negative feelings in these participants and then showed them, following the elicitation, they showed them faces on a screen. And really what they note is that this exhibits the difference between egocentric projection and relational projection. What this means is that when the faces were shown to the individualistic people, they tended to see their own feelings in the faces. So if they had felt angry because that was what was elicited in them, they would look at the face and say, "Oh, he looks very angry." They really sort of egocentrically saw themselves in the other. On the other hand, the collectivist background individuals tended to see what they think of as the prompting reaction. So, for example, if the individual, felt fear when they would see the face, they would not also see fear, they would see how they perceived people would react to their fear, so anger. If they felt sad, they would see the other face then as being sympathetic. So as if the face was interplaying with their own. The last part of this article that I personally just would like to touch upon is the way in which the authors see perspective taking relating to increases in compassion and concern for others, and even the reduction of feelings of prejudice and discriminatory actions. I was reading this article again for this class. I actually don't think we read it last year for our class in 2015. And I was reading and I thought to myself, wow, this article really seems to reinforce the spiritual teachings that you've heard in a number of religious traditions. What comes to mind is both the Buddha's and Jesus's golden rule, which the Buddha says in the affirmative and Jesus says in the negative, which is, as Buddha puts it, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and Jesus says, don't do to others what you would not want done to yourself. For me, this seems to indicate that despite the relative infancy of positive psychology, these concepts of what it means to have very positive interpersonal relationships seems to be something that humans have understood for a long time and even have regarded as being pretty enlightened. The golden rule is central to both Buddhism and to Christianity, and I know it comes up in a number of other traditions. So the idea that what is elucidated in this article is completely innovative and new and unique to what positive psychology can show us is, I think, more evidence of the fact that the science is in its infancy and is still in a way catching up to really what many humans have known for quite some time. Of course, that's, in my opinion, not to say that the science has nothing to offer us that's new. I think it means really that it's onto something, and that continued investigation into understanding how to apply positive psychology to our interactions with others is something that we should really continue to pursue moving forward. Now, the rest of these slides in the PowerPoint, they are they are from a clinical psychology perspective, and particularly relate to treatment of couples, conflict resolution, imbalanced power dynamics, and reference a family systems approach, which is one way, one therapeutic approach in both clinical and counseling psychology. To be honest, I am not going to go into these methods because I am not too familiar with them. It's Yakov who has the 5 years of doctoral preparation behind him, and I'm only about to start my own. So I don't feel I want to review these, but I do encourage you to look through and bring any issues to discussion that you feel you want to present to the group next week regarding how the concepts presented in these 3 articles could be applicable to couples in a counseling or clinical setting. I'd be very interested to know what people have to say. That essentially concludes the lecture for this week. So this is the last recorded lecture of the class. On the following Tuesday, after this discussion on the 19th, we will not have a recorded lecture, but instead jump right into our debate. The debate will be the last discussion-based class, following which the next week we'll have our final. If you have any questions about the debate, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Yakov, although this week he's out because he's going to be defending his dissertation. Yay! So please don't hesitate though to reach out to at least me, if not him as well. Your final is being finalized, and we look forward to hearing your debate in about a week. All right, and thank you for bearing with me as I do my first full lecture for this class. I've never talked for so long to the computer. Thank you very much, and we look forward to a very exciting classroom discussion next week. Have a great week, and see you soon.